I am happy to be joined by the head coach and owner of Pura Vida BJJ in MMA. And of course, it is Jake Klipp. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Thank you for the time. I really appreciate it. I know you got a lot of stuff going on. Not only do you have quite a stable of legit fighters that you're preparing for upcoming fights and potential fights, but you also run your own gym here and you have a promotion that you run as well. I guess my first question is right out of the gate with this pandemic that has affected all of us in such a negative way. How has it affected your business and your ability to train your fighters?
So we had to shut down the gym for 2 months. Before, as the pandemic started up, we had an in-house discussion. The decision makers on the team are me, Zak and Solo Acosta. And we decided, regardless of what the law said, regardless of what public opinion said, what the health department and CDC said, is what we were going to do. And so we actually shut our gym down a day or two before Wisconsin ordered a lockdown. We were closed for 2 months, I think 2 months exactly, and started with a slow open. Lost some members because they were out of work, and just life hit them. And we were fortunate enough to have enough members keep able to continue to make their tuition payments that we weren't in danger of closing or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, it was really tough. This has been my full-time job for 10 years, and to not be able to do what to me is the most important part of my job was really tough, teaching people.
Now, as far as the state of Wisconsin goes, what has it been like? I'm all the way up in New England. The state of Maine, where I'm at specifically, hasn't been affected quite as bad as some other states on the East Coast. But what has it been like in Wisconsin? When you go out, are there people in hazmat suits walking around? I know I see all kinds of stuff up this way.
Not right now. Right now, it almost feels like life is normal, except people wear masks when they're at stores and stuff. But people are out and about. When the lockdown first happened, there were not people out. The streets were pretty barren. I know my wife's a nurse, so I had and then we've got some fighters that are doctors and nurses, and they were preparing for it to get real rough here. A lot of people did get sick, but we're the coast got hit hard, and it was slow working its way into the middle of the country, and so it never got too bad. I know the city was very prepared. It was kind of scary. The city had rented these refrigerator trucks in case the pandemic had gotten out of control here. There's an Olympic ice ring downtown called the Pettit Center. And I guess the city contracted with the Pettit Center and these refrigeration trucks just in case COVID had spiraled out of control and the hospitals were overwhelmed with people passing from the virus. So it was like a bad scene from a movie. And then we sort of got past that. And everyone kind of took a little sigh of relief and was like, okay, it's not going to be as bad as we thought it could be. And then once businesses started being allowed to open, now there was, there's going to be businesses that just opened anyway. But when it kind of officially came out that the state said, all right, 25% capacity, no contact, you guys can get back to work. It was great.
Was anybody specifically from your gym or any family members of fighters or anything affected? Did anybody contract the virus at all?
No one specifically from the gym that I know of. Not to put a bad cast on the interview, but my mom passed away in December real unexpectedly. And we thought it was a lot of the symptoms kind of sounded like COVID. Now, it didn't supposedly come to the country until, a month or two after she passed, but whether it was that or something else, maybe I was affected by it, but it's not like a whole bunch of people I know caught it or had to deal with family members that caught it.
Geez, I'm really sorry to hear about your mother. I did not know that. So my sincerest condolences to you and your family. Coach Klipp, does what we're going through, what the country's going through, does it kind of alter your, I guess, perception of day-to-day life and what is most important and how you're going to conduct yourself moving forward? Or is this just one of those things where it is what it is, and we're doing the best we can to push forward and get back to some sense of normality?
A little bit of both. I've got an 8-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter. So I've got one of my main jobs in life is helping them shape the way they see the world. And this is a completely unique thing. And I can't ignore it and pretend like it's nothing because they didn't get to go to school and people are talking about it. But I also can't overreact and panic because my kids are going to take my energy. So in regards to, what I would say is my main job, a little bit of both. As far as running the gym goes and the fight team and coaching, you can wish things were different, but they're not. They're the way they are. And our job is to make champions and conquer the world of MMA. And so everybody else is dealing with the same situation we are. We're just trying to deal with it better than everyone else.
Yeah, I'd like to start getting to your fighters here with a guy that I know fairly well. I've interviewed him a few times, and that is your co-owner, one of the coaches there, longtime UFC welterweight, Zak Ottow. It's been a while since we've seen him inside the cage, man. I believe March of 2019 is when we last saw him. He had that loss to Alex. What's the future like for him? Are we going to see him back in there in the octagon at some point soon?
Yeah, so he had an injury, had to get surgery after that fight. It was also the last fight on his UFC contract. So he was almost in limbo recovering from surgery. He wasn't like cut. So the UFC could call and say, we want you for such and such a fight. When we take Montell out to Abu Dhabi, he's like, these fights are falling off on, people fail a test and a fight falls apart. Zak's in incredible shape. And if the UFC needs him, he's ready to go. But also he is a free agent. So if another organization calls and wants to give him a little bit of work, he's free to take something like that if he wants to. He will fight again. He's not done.
Yeah. As far as the welterweights go in the Bellator division, when you look at where he's at right now in his career, how do you feel like he stacks up with the top 5 over there? I mean, you look at Douglas Lima, there's a lot of legit fighters at welterweight there. How does Zak stack up with the elite guys there?
I think there's like this version of Zak we've seen a few times, and something that Solo and I work with him on is if we can get that grade A believing in himself and going out there and being violent and aggressive Zak, I don't think he can beat anybody in the world. So we've seen more and more of that Zak, and you want to put him in the Bellator top 5. If we can get that switch, maybe if we can flip it and then break it off so it never shuts off again, then there's none of them that he can't beat. Yeah.
How did that loss to Morono help him grow? Is there something you learned there?
He's a thinker. So, you sit down and you study tape and you look at, technically what went right and wrong. There's things that fans see on camera that of course we get to see a lot more of. So there's, this went well and this didn't go well in camp, and we can clean those things up ourselves. But he just, it's the fight game, and sometimes it's your night and sometimes it's not, and it wasn't his night that night.
Now, excuse my ignorance, but are you and Zak the same age?
No. Even though he looks much older and I'm far better looking, I am about 5 years older than Zak.
Well, I was going to ask, I wasn't sure if you guys are about the same age, because I noticed too that you had a very impressive pro career as well. You went 3-1. Do you ever get that itch sometimes to, maybe get back in there when you see some of these fighters that you're training succeed the way they are?
I never fought because I wanted to be UFC champion. I really liked training. I really liked the circle of friends I was building, and they were all doing it, and I just didn't want them to think I was a sissy, so I fought. And I fought 12 times, and I won 9 of them. And I was 3-1 as a pro. I was going to do another fight a couple years ago, but I'd never caught the UFC bug. I train these guys. I get to see what they are. And I was all right for when I fought. But I'll be elite as a coach. I never was at the level that these guys are. They're truly special, and I was pretty self-aware. I knew I was good, but these guys are great.
Yeah, well, you clearly have an elite level of fighters, a great stable of fighters there at the gym. Let's talk about another guy that is coming off a loss, but clearly a bright future. Ode Osbourne, the Jamaican sensation. He had that loss to Brian Kelleher. I'll be honest with you, I didn't see that one coming. I'm heavy on DraftKings, making bets a lot, and I usually do pretty well. And I had Ode lined in there for a lot of my lineups. Were you surprised at that outcome?
Yeah, of course. I think we're going to win every fight. Brian played it like a veteran, and Ode played it like a UFC rookie. You know, he went out there, something I actually will, you know, of course, we'll take lessons from all of our fights. But one of the lessons we pulled out of this one, I talked to the team about, is you're going to make your UFC debut, and you're going to have all these dreams of what's going to happen. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to gorilla walk Superman punch, and I'm going to do all these cool things that I've been practicing. And you're not going to do all those things. You know, they're not all going to work. You're not going to get to do them all. Over your career, you can do all those things. But that first UFC fight, you know, if you do one or two spectacular things and just kick the guy's butt the rest of the time, you're a superstar. And he almost went out there a little too like, I need to do this cool thing and that cool thing and the next cool thing, and just got a little ahead of himself and forgot, you know, some of the basics. And it was a good lesson for him. Good lesson for a lot of the guys too. It sucks to have to lose a lesson like that in front of, you know, 1 million people or however many people were watching. But the benefit is he learned it, and then hopefully the other guys on the team don't have to make that same mistake and on the same stage.
What is the ceiling for Ode? How good can he be?
He can be champion of the world. We have a couple guys we have a lot of guys at the gym with realistic winning fights in the UFC type of dreams and potential. And we've got a handful of guys where when it's all said and done, if you told me that they wore that belt, I'd just kind of smile and nod and say, yeah, you know, that makes total sense. And Ode's he's got with the belt on him potential.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see him back in the fight game and in the octagon soon. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later. Leah Letson, that girl is an absolute stud, and she was on The Ultimate Fighter season 28, I believe. She's had 2 fights canceled in a row. She's got to be itching to get back in there. When do you expect to see her in there again next?
Yeah, hopefully soon. She's got some medical issues that she's hit a couple stumbling blocks on that she's working out. She's also in the Air National Guard, so she's actually working at COVID testing centers right now. So she's training, but she can't train as much as she'd like to because she's serving the country. So she'll be back hopefully sooner than later, and she's pretty optimistic right now about her current health situation.
Well, that's good to hear. I always enjoy watching her compete as well. Now, a fella that I don't know too much about, I haven't actually seen him fight, but you told me he's got a fight for LFA coming up at the end of the month. Jake Heavlin, his nickname's the Teddy Bear. Tell me about this guy.
Oh, little Jake. Little Jake cuts to make 265. He walks around between 290 and 300. And he's like 6 foot, 6'1", but he's one of those guys when he walks into a doorway, he's got to kind of turn himself sideways to get through. Montell's got giant hands. Montel Jackson has these like super big hands, especially for a bantamweight. Jake's got like Montel-sized hands, but they're a catcher's mitt. Like they're huge. I've never used more tape wrapping someone's hands than I do with Jake. He's a wrestler. He's a slugger, and he's mean and likes to fight. Couple guys on the team. Montel's one of them too, but Montell, Jake, if there was no such thing as UFC and if there was no such thing as getting paid to fight, these guys would still be out doing it anyway. So the Teddy Bear is a misnomer. He's a mean dude.
Ooh, so tell me about this fight that he has coming up. What can you tell about his opponent? What kind of stylistic fight should this one be?
He's fighting on LFA July 24th. Jordan, I might say his name wrong. Jordan Heiderman, I think, is his opponent. Another 1-0 pro heavyweight. We've got a little experience because this Heiderman beat one of our amateurs a couple years ago, so I've seen him in action. He can wrestle, but he wrestles. He's in good shape and he wrestles. His hands are all right. Jake's just one of those, like, I feel like he's an overwhelming force, and I don't think it's going to be long before he catches notice. And at heavyweight, you don't have to win. You don't have to be 10-0 at heavyweight to get to the UFC and start winning fights. I don't think it's going to take too long for him to get people to recognize his name.
Nice. Well, I'll be looking for him here soon as well. So he actually had a no contest in your promotion. Can you elaborate what happened there? Was this like a back of the head type of punch? What?
Yeah, there was he kneed the guy and caught him in the groin, and the guy couldn't continue the fight. So yeah, just an unfortunate. The guy couldn't. I think you get 5 minutes, and it was a pretty solid knee.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like fun. So as far as your promotion goes, the pandemic obviously has affected that. When do you expect to have that up and running and be putting on fights again?
So we're working with our state commission right now because they've got guidelines and rules. And I mean, the thing with COVID is, despite what social media would tell you, no one actually knows what's going on or how this works. We're all just trying to do our best. So the state commission and the commissioner, Mary, they're working with me to try to figure out how we can safely hold an event. There are shows in the state scheduled for September where I'd love to be the first show back in Wisconsin. So we've got, it's not official just yet, but we're working on something maybe as early as August if I can get it done. But we'd like to get back to work on shows, just get the guys in the state and in the gym fighting again.
As far as fans in the stands go, how is that going to work? Will you actually have paid actual patrons there to watch the fights, or no?
The show that we're tentatively putting together right now, we think we're going to do at 25% capacity. So about a quarter of the crowd of what we normally have. And we're going to try to do a little online pay-per-view model with a local show like ours. Something like that usually doesn't work real well. So we're going to maybe set a low price point, just something to try to get views on the show. Between the handful of tickets we'll be able to sell and the couple of sponsors that are going to come through, we're pretty confident we'll break even. And it is a part of our income running the Pure FC shows, but it's not. It's about getting the guys back to work and getting fights going again. And we'll have a small crowd, but we'll be back to work. We'll get the guys fighting. So looking forward to it.
Good. Well, that's good to hear. Hopefully that happens sooner rather than later. Let's talk about this upcoming trip you have to Abu Dhabi. You got Montel Jackson stepping back in there, taking on a really tough fighter in Bret Johns. When are you making the trip down there? I got to imagine you're going to be heading out soon.
Yeah, the UFC is going to fly us out. Everyone's got to leave early. There's a whole string of COVID tests that we're all going to go through. And we don't have the exact departure date yet. His fight's on the 18th. Typically, we'd leave on a Tuesday for an overseas flight. You might leave Monday or the Sunday or Monday before. They're telling us be ready to go before that so that we can get through all the COVID tests that they have for us. The UFC's chartering planes to Abu Dhabi for us. So we're anywhere from the end of, I don't even know what day today is.
Today's the 1st, July 1st.
Coming up pretty soon. Whether we leave that Sunday or the Saturday before, or even the Thursday or Friday before that, it'll be a nice long trip for us.
So you and Zach will be down there. Is it just the two of you there cornering Montell, or will it be anyone else coming?
No, Solo Acosta. Solo's like Montell's main coach. They came up together, and Zak, Solo, and I will be the coaches that go out with Montell for this fight.
How do you feel like fighting in front of no fans is going to affect Montell? I mean, he was on the Contender Series. That's not that many people there anyways, but this is different. It's a different animal. I mean, the whole world's going to be watching. There's no live sports going on. So you got all these other fans that don't pay quite as much attention to the UFC and MMA like the hardcores do. And now the eyes of the world are going to be there. How do you feel like that's going to affect him?
Montell, are you nervous? Nobody watches you fight anyway, so it probably won't be any change for you, right?
Fuck that, get this right.
No, I think Contender Series was a great experience. Good question. I think
about the same.
You'll see some of the guys that fight are like surprised at how quiet it is. They're surprised that they can hear the announcers, especially like the more established guys that have been around for a while. But all these kids coming up from Contender Series, they've all done it. They've all been in that silent room where the coaches can hear each other, and every little thing that goes on, everybody can hear. So it was unique when we did it on Contender Series. as a team, we've got a couple training games we play to simulate that environment. But Montell's been through it. Business as usual. He's a killer. I don't think it's going to affect him at all.
Okay, so I've interviewed Tony Gravely a bunch of times. I love the kid. He's a great fighter, and he is the most recent fight for his opponent, Bret Johns, and he got Tony out of there. It was a really impressive performance. What did you take from that win, and how do you feel it's going to translate into the stylistic matchup against a much different fighter in Jackson?
Yeah, Montell's he's very different from Tony. We've known Bret for a while. I think they fought back-to-back that night, but we shared a locker room with him. Very friendly guy, get along with him good. There's not a ton you can take out of that fight because Montell and Tony fight so different. But you do get to see tendencies that show up from fight to fight to fight. And he did some things in the Gravely fight that I expect he'll do against Montell. And, we'll have a plan for it. And if the plan doesn't work, we'll have another plan ready to go too. I like that it's 2 top 25 guys. It's the right test for both of them. I think we're ready to pass the test, and we'll find out on the 18th.
His 2 losses are to a couple of studs in the division, obviously Aljo, and you got Munoz. When you looked at those fights, was there anything that you could take from it that felt like, hey, these guys, what they did to get in there and beat him, Montell's going to be able to do something similar stylistic-wise?
Yeah, they of course, everyone's got different styles, but we've looked at Aljo for a while as a guy that has a lot of the physical traits that Montell has, athleticism-wise, length-wise. Now he fights different than we do, but plenty of the things that those guys got to work. Well, the other thing is this is an evolving game, so it's not like the Bret Johns that fought Aljo is the same guy we're going to see, because just like us, he's working on what went wrong for him. But there's tendencies. There's things he does well against everybody, and there's things that he struggles with against people. And part of the game is part of the reason we sit and study so much tape is we're looking for those tendencies and we're looking for them. And when we see them, we want to recognize them. And it's one of the reasons I think our coaching staff has been successful.
So to piggyback off that question, it's interesting because, when I look at the last 3 fights of Montell's career and how he's evolved since that loss to Simone, how much better of a fighter is he now versus when he got beat by Ricky?
He's a significantly better fighter. He was so young in his pro career. He joined our gym right at the end of his amateur career. He'd had like maybe 10 amateur fights, and he was really good. He did an amateur fight or 2 under us. And then he went pro, and it was like, I think he was 5-0 when he won a Contender Series. He'd been a pro for like a year, maybe less than a year at that point. He does really well. He ends up getting a UFC offer against Ricky, and he just hasn't been a pro for very long at that point. The physical tools were there, but he wasn't training. He wasn't doing his strength and conditioning like he is now. His understanding of the game wasn't where it's at now. So one of the things we appreciate about the UFC and Sean is the way they've, sometimes they'll rush fights at guys, and like a guy looks good and they're like, okay, you're going to fight this guy and this guy and this guy. And all of a sudden you're in the top 15. And once you're in the top 15, that's all you get to fight. And with Montell, it's been a collaborative effort between his manager, Jason House, with Sean Shelby, and with us coaches. And we've been looking for the appropriate next test. And again, one of the reasons I love this fight is because Bret and Montell are top 25 guys. One of them is ready to go make a push to get into the top 15. Of course, we think it's us. But the time to have a test like this is right now, because it's either your time, you're ready to get going on that run, or you need a little bit more work. And it's been cool to have the time to get better at fighting. I remember after his it was after he beat Brian Kelleher, I went over and said something to Sean, and he's like, man, the craziest thing is he doesn't even know how to fight yet. And it was true. Like he's this savage beast, and now he's a savage beast that knows how to fight. So it's going to be cool.
So without giving away the game plan, how does Montell get his hand raised? Is this going to be another knockout win, a sub, or is this going the distance?
He's going to do like a backflip off the cage. He's been working on a bunch of spinning shit. He's this destructive force. No one that's ever fought him has walked out without being hurt. Even Ricky, losing that fight, we got to put our beating out there and plant our flag a little bit. So I hope Bret's ready to take a thumping. I know that he's good and talented and going to bring a tough fight to us, but we're going to put a beating on him. And there's all kinds of different violent things Montell likes to do in the cage, and hopefully we get to show a bunch of them off.
Well, I definitely looking forward to this one. And I got to ask you, there's so many great fights on Fight Island. Outside of this fight, obviously, which is the number one for you, what fight are you most looking forward to? I mean, for me, the welterweight belt on the line. I mean, you got the featherweight belt on the line. There's the bantamweight belt on the line. There's so many interesting options here to choose from. What stands out to you?
So now the first Fight Island show, that's when all the title fights are, right?
Right. Yeah. So there's three of them. There's, bantamweight, featherweight, and obviously the welterweight. So
yeah.
There's a lot.
Yeah. So that's going to be an incredible night of fights. If we're in Vegas, we're going to have to find a spot to sit down. Well, we'll probably be quarantined in our room. So we're going to have to order the pay-per-view to watch. I think Usman reminds me of Montell a little bit. He reminds me of Montell in that, at the end of a fight, they always ask the winner, who do you want next? No one said Kamaru Usman. No one said, I want Kamaru Usman next. And he was like the boogeyman. Like he was coming. If you were ahead of him in the rankings, it was like, man, goddamn, I hope I don't have to fight that guy. So he's got that factor for me. So I love that fight. I thought Max and Volkanovski was a great fight. I think Max is one of the best. I won't say he's the best featherweight of all time, because I disagree with Joe on that. But I think it's going to be another great fight. And then, of course, we're invested in the bantamweight division. So Peter Yan, I don't even know if I'm saying Peter right, but Peter Yan, and then Jose Aldo. Yeah, I think Yan's the guy. But the top 5, 6 at bantamweight, there's a whole bunch of worthy contenders. So I think we just get to see, who's got the strap and who's going to fight this gauntlet of great prospects next. Bantamweight is probably the one because we have Montell and because we have O'Day on the team, I'm probably most excited for the bantamweight division. But as a fight fan, I like the boogeyman. I like Kamaru Usman.
For sure. What do you think about that bantamweight division as far as the top of the heap goes right now? Because obviously with Cejudo retiring, you got Yan and Aldo here fighting for the belt. A lot of people are upset that both of those guys are fighting for the belt. I mean, you got Aldo, granted, he's one of the greatest of all time, but he's coming down a division and he's getting right in there to a title shot. And then you got Yan. I believe the only top win he has is over Jimmy Rivera. I mean, he got right into a title shot a lot quicker than many people feel like he should have. What is your take on that?
Above my pay grade, I don't get to make the fights. I think there's Marlon Moraes is getting slept on. It's like, well, let's forget about that guy. Like, come on, he might be the best guy in the world right now. You've got Aljo. Sandhagen's going to get a win and get right back into it. Now Cody Garbrandt's back in the mix. It's competitively far enough out from us that it'll kind of sort a little bit before I think Montell's up and taking top 5 fights, but not so far off that like those guys will be up there. They'll just kind of be sorted a little bit, and maybe we'll get to see some of them on our way up. I think Aldo's the best featherweight of all time. He's down at bantamweight. You can arguably say that one guy or another should have won a fight. Well, he's getting the shot. So he's a legend. We'll see how he does. I did think he looked a lot better at featherweight than maybe I thought he would. I thought he'd be chinny, because most guys that drop like that, most big guys that drop like that, you sacrifice your chin. So go get it done. Just get the belt figured out. That's what I want. I'm glad it's not in limbo. I'm glad Cejudo didn't say, like, I'm going to take a big, long break and hold on to this thing. I think he did it right. Whatever his intentions are, maybe he's really retired. Maybe he's really done. Or maybe he's like, a year from now when there's a champ, I'll come back and it'll be champ versus champ and I can finally get my payday. However it works out for him, I hope it works out. But I'm glad the division's not held up. So, let's get some action and get it going. You got Moraes, you got Aljo, you've got worthy contenders ready to go for whoever wins that fight.
Agreed. Well, listen, Coach Klipp, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me here today. Before I let you go, if there's anyone you'd like to thank or any social media you'd like to plug, the floor is yours.
Hey, I'm not going to push too hard on the stuff, but I'm Pura Vida Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Mixed Martial Arts. If you're looking for a gym in Milwaukee, we're the spot. My partner, Zak Ottow, he and I are the yin and yang of the place, the dad and mom of the place, Batman and Robin. So happy to have Zak on board. And then, my wife, Andrea, couldn't do it without her support. So appreciate you having me. Appreciate those guys. And can't wait to get back to work and show off what we've been doing.